Okay. Welcome, all of you. Good afternoon for those of you who are here and for those who may be online later. Uh, I'm Doug Jones, the chair of the Vancouver Island chapter of CARP, and welcome to our hybrid meeting for those of you physically in this room here at Shoal Center and those who are online, as well as those of you who may be watching later on the YouTube, because this will be recorded. So, first of all, to acknowledge the fact that we are physically on the land of many First Nations for Vancouver Island and the Canadian Gulf Islands of the Salish Sea, whose traditional territory CARP Vancouver Island chapter operates, and their peoples, whose historical relationship to the land continues to this day. Just a couple of housekeeping things, because of the fact that we have people online as well. It would be nice if they would put their name and where they're located in the chat function, which they should have on their Zoom as well. And if you have any questions, put them on the chat because I'll certainly go back and have a look at those later, as well as for the people who are in the room here to give an opportunity for those who have questions online. And again, for those who are online, please make sure that your mic is muted during the presentation. And for everyone, including those here, I'd prefer that you hold your questions till the end of the session so that everyone has an opportunity to ask questions. Keep your questions brief so we have the opportunity to get as many questions as possible. This is being recorded. It will be available on YouTube. It takes about a week to get it on there. So if you've missed something or want to go back and review something, or you know someone who would like to have been here but couldn't at this time, you can give them that information. We will post that both on our Facebook page as well as in the chapter newsletter that'll be coming out that gives a description of things that went on today as well. Okay. We will try to keep the meeting exactly 1 hour as we promised, so it'll end at 3 o'clock. And hopefully that will give you an opportunity to have asked your questions as well. So today's speaker is Darylyn Way from Orderly Affairs. And many of you will have seen some of her articles in our newsletter and have appreciated some of the comments that she's already made. I first met Darylyn when we were here physically in this room in the Shoal Center for the United Way BC's Healthy Aging consultation in October of 23. She's subsequently that we've chatted a few times and provided several articles that are really well received in our newsletter. And with that brief introduction, I'd like to call on Darylyn, and I'll stop sharing this one and try to get her screen up.
And just let me know if this is working. Oh,
okay, you should be.
So much technology. Well, thank you very much, Doug and CARP, for the invitation to be here today. I feel like I actually know you through these articles that Doug spoke of that I contributed to in your newsletter. You might be hearing some of the same things, pieces of some of the things you read about in the articles today, but I trust that it will be all good repetition. My name is Darylyn Way. I am the owner and operator of Orderly Affairs, and the purpose of my business is to help people get their affairs in order. So I retired from the provincial government 1 week before COVID started, if you can imagine. So in some ways, it was the perfect opportunity for me to develop this business because all I could do was stay at home and do research and develop ideas. And so it was a great opportunity for me to get started with this particular business. A lot of people wonder, why do you want to be involved in end-of-life matters? And yeah, this is a subject, a conversation that's very difficult to have, but I was learning through my own personal experience with older people in my family, my husband's family, getting older myself, entering into that new season of life, that these are very important matters that we should be in the least talking about and of course getting organized for and planning for. And so that's how I ended up in this particular business. I love to plan and organize, and really getting our affairs is about that. It's about learning, but it's also then getting organized and putting plans in place. I am going to be referring to my notes because there's a lot of information that I don't want to miss. This is a jam-packed information session. I do have handouts that you can pick up afterwards for particularly important pieces that I will be talking about. And my husband, Mike, is in the back there. He is looking after sales, and you can visit him if there's anything that you might be interested in. This is a pretend mic. I am going on the volume of my own voice right now for this room, which I trust is good. And as Doug mentioned, we will have some time at the end of the presentation for questions and sharing some stories. So I like to start this presentation with this particular slide to take some of the edge off this discussion of end of life. Most people understand that they will die. They just don't expect it to happen in their lifetime. So I trust this is resonating with you as it has with many people I've met over the last 4 years. We tend to associate getting our affairs in order with death, with things that we dread. We understand it is necessary, but we procrastinate getting it done. We may even think we might be jinxing ourselves if we think about preparing a will and everything else associated with getting our affairs in order. Some people consider it complicated and not even necessary. In fact, you will often hear comments such as, "I'll let my kids worry about that." Having our affairs in order is an incredible gift that we leave for those who will need to look after our affairs when we are gone. It is also incredibly important as we age and we need assistance from others. Truthfully, getting our affairs in order is just about being organized, and this is applicable in any season of life. So we all have stories about how well things went for some families as they go through the end of life. We also have a lot of stories about how poorly things went. We typically put off getting our affairs in order until the end of life, when such decision-making becomes very stressful and very expensive. Of course, as with any planning, the earlier we start, the easier it is. When I looked into what support people needed to get their affairs in order, I was also learning that planning well before our death helps us to live our lives more fully. So what do I mean by that? Thinking about our mortality can change the way we live today, because talking openly about life's end can help us focus on the important things. So let's see if you can recognize yourself in any of the following scenarios. Some of us will try to figure out on our own how to get our affairs in order. We have an idea of what this means. We can become quickly overwhelmed when we try to explain it to ourselves and try to figure it out for ourselves. This is when we typically stop and put it off for another day, which quickly becomes consumed with much more interesting tasks. Others don't want to discuss getting their affairs in order at all. The subject matter can be difficult. After all, we are inevitably talking about our mortality, and we don't like to talk about death in our society. This is not something that we are accustomed to having day-to-day conversations about. So as an adult child, perhaps you recognize that the capabilities of your aging parents are failing, and they need help with getting tasks done. You may be wondering how well their affairs are in order at this time in their lives. This is not an easy matter to consider. We are used to considering our parents in control of their lives. So maybe you are an in-home care healthcare provider, or you are helping an older adult with things such as downsizing or care, and the subject matter of getting our affairs in order comes up. You recognize the importance for your client or your friend or family member and want to provide useful suggestions, but you don't know who to refer them to or where to get help from. Regarding our future healthcare matters, we know we need to talk to our doctor about end-of-life matters, but realize very quickly there's much to consider. And we would like some support with learning and making good decisions. So let's get practical about what it means to get our affairs in order. So getting our affairs in order does require some effort. I sell a product called the Orderly Affairs Guide, which is a workbook designed to help you easily divide the work under separate tabs, as this slide suggests. Each tab provides vital information so you understand what is involved with that subject matter. Each tab also has related tasks to complete in the form of templates, typically, which help you document your affairs. Relevant documents get inserted into the binder. It's in a binder format under the appropriate tab. Some tabs will take longer to complete and others may not be relevant at all. So for example, you'll see here tab 8, pets. If you have a pet, there's actually some really important considerations to put in place should you die before your pet. If you don't have a pet, this is obviously a tab that you don't have to worry about. While other tabs, such as information on your property, finances, and insurance, are relevant at any stage in life. Completing tabs 1 through 8 is a great way to prepare to meet with a legal representative to complete or update your will. So I have come across the scenario of people not having their will done because it is just so overwhelming. They don't know where to start. So this is a great way, and they're concerned because, like, why are they asking all these questions? What do I need? Is it going to cost me a lot of money? Preparing your information using a resource such as my guide helps you to prepare for that conversation with the legal representative. You're collecting the information that they're going to be asking you about, and you're going to have a good understanding as to what is required. And then in tab 9, estate planning, that is when you're going to be documenting all of your information for your will, your power of attorney, and what have you, that everything that's associated with the estate plan. So, and just as another sidebar, I've had my guide reviewed by 3 different lawyers in the Victoria area. And one of them suggested, Darylyn, you should really put estate planning. I had it at the very beginning because, of course, that's what we all think about when we think about getting our affairs in order, what we think about first. And he suggested you should be putting it after all of that other information, because in order to write a good will, I need to have that information. And if you can get your clients to prepare that information, have it at hand, and understand what is involved, it's going to save me a lot of time. And all 3 lawyers, by the way, that have reviewed my guide, they all will offer you a $100 discount on your estate planning package because they want to see clients and they want to have clients that are well prepared with their estate planning in general. So, of course, all of this information becomes incredibly important for your executor. And essentially, this is your executor's Bible. This is everything they will need to administer your estate after you are gone. What often happens, I should say, is that, when someone passes away and someone is the designated executor starts looking into their responsibilities, it becomes very quickly overwhelming for them because everything is all over the place. They don't know where to find it. It's time consuming. It's not matters that they typically deal with. And that's when they throw up their hands and they say to the legal representative, can you do this for me? Which they are glad to do for you at their hourly rate. So you can save your estate a lot of money by being prepared with this information documented and consolidated in one place, such as a resource as the guide. So another thing is we don't know where to start. So you can use a resource such as the guide to help you know where to start and do it 1 tab at a time, manageable chunks, I like to say. So in addition to the general information I have under each tab, I include over 40 tips throughout the guide that give insight into lesser known but beneficial information. This was information I was learning as I was developing this business. So for example, this slide explains the Ombuds service for life and health insurance, which provides free impartial help to Canadian life and health insurance consumers. This service may help you discover insurance policies you may have paid off and forgotten about. And there are literally billions of unclaimed insurance claims in Canada because people purchase insurance policies, they forget about them, they don't document them, and now the executor, the family, has no idea how to collect them. They don't even know there's something to collect. So this is a good example of where getting your affairs in order does require some work. You have to look into these things. Geez, didn't I have an insurance policy when I was working with whatever organization or what have you? This is your chance to sort of walk through and get all of that information documented for yourself as well as your estate. And of course, the tips are in the relevant tab. So this particular tip would be under the insurance tab. So another service we provide is advanced care planning, and this is a very important part of getting our affairs in order. Advanced care planning is about planning for our future healthcare needs. It is a universal term that describes making your wishes known to family members and caregivers regarding the beliefs and values you wish to guide those end-of-life decisions when you cannot make them yourself. Advanced care planning is ultimately about getting the support and advocacy of someone you trust to make medical health decisions on your behalf. Leaving someone to make these healthcare decisions for you without a plan is like sending someone to the grocery store without a list. How will they know what decisions to make on your behalf if you haven't had these conversations or put these documents in place? There are legal requirements in BC around this designation, so it needs to be considered and planned for well in advance. Requirements for advanced care planning are different from province to province, so it is essential for you to know and to have in place what is relevant in BC. And it is important to note here that even if you can make your own decision at the end of life, advanced care planning is a great way to start thinking about and being proactive about your future healthcare planning. Yes.
Can I take a thought?
Oh, of course, yes, yes, no problem at all. And take one each of the handouts too, if that's helpful. So I want to spend some time reviewing this particular diagram, which is part of one of the handouts here. So the next 2-3 slides will be all documented for you in a handout if you would like to take it home. So this diagram helps explain the difference between advanced care and estate planning. Many people think that their power of attorney will make their healthcare decisions at the end of life, but that is not the case in BC. Your power of attorney has authority over your legal and financial affairs, which are part of estate planning and not your healthcare matters. In BC, authority for your healthcare decision-making must be designated to a representative via a representation agreement. All British Columbians need to know about these two very separate actions. Please know that it is just as important to consider your future healthcare needs separate from your financial and legal needs. And I say that because many people think they've got their will, their power of attorney in place, they've got their affairs in order. And I hope what you're learning throughout this presentation is that there's actually a lot of different things to consider with respect to getting our affairs in order. So we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive with that particular slide because this remains one of the most or the least understood concepts of estate and advanced care planning. So the blue font in this slide, and don't worry, I have a handout. You'll be able to read it on the handout. What this blue font in the repeated diagram illustrates is that a power of attorney document only looks after your legal and financial matters. In BC, the document known as a representation agreement designates who will be responsible for your health and personal care matters when you cannot do so yourself. The representation agreement is a legal document in BC that you use to legally communicate the name of someone who will share your wishes, not theirs, your wishes, to healthcare professionals if and when you cannot express them in a health or personal care scenario. It is best to prepare your representation agreement when you are not in a healthcare crisis and can decide what kind of care you would prefer and who would make that decision on your behalf should that be required. Without a representation agreement in place, healthcare staff must refer to and use a legislated priority listing of what are known as temporary substitution decision makers to act on your behalf, who may not be the person you would decide had you been allowed to express that. And in such a scenario, healthcare staff should not be referring to your power of attorney. So when you're in the hospital, they shouldn't be asking for a power of attorney. Who's your power of attorney? They should be asking, who's your healthcare representative? Doesn't always happen that way. This is legislative change that happened over 10 years ago, but the system is still trying to catch up. But you know that really the legal representative for your healthcare decision making is your representative. Sometimes it can be the same person, but that's a deeper dive that I go into with my service in particular. And the story I like to share with this particular example is, so let's say I'm living in Victoria, I'm a widow, my neighbor and I, we talk about future healthcare matters, what we would prefer all the time. We even talk about our vigil planning and what we would like to have at our funeral. But my brother Bob, who lives in Toronto, I talk to him once a year at Christmas. We have a relationship, but it's not very close. You know, we exchange some pleasantries at Christmas time, and that's basically it until next Christmas. So if I in Victoria was to become hospitalized for any reason and they needed a healthcare representative to start making decisions on my behalf, the hospital staff is going to go to that legislated prioritized listing of temporary substitution decision makers, whom they have to ask to step in for me to make whatever healthcare decisions need to be made at the time, because healthcare staff typically do not want to make those decisions. They want to be referring to your emergency contact, your next of kin, and what that really should mean is your representative. Just so you know that too. And so they will start from the list, and it is all family members until you get to the bottom. So the first person is going to be your spouse, then it's going to be your siblings, your children, your siblings, your nieces, nephews, grandchildren. It is a very extensive list of family relations that they need to run through and try to contact to make those decisions for you. Your neighbor, Mary, as a friend, is on the very bottom of that list. So they're going to have to go through a number of people before they get to Mary. But if I had designated Mary as my representative in the representation agreement, and I had that, and that was shared with my healthcare staff, with Mary, of course. And when I become hospitalized, Mary would probably be there because she's my neighbor and she knows everything going on in my life. And she would be able to say, I am the legal representative. I am making decisions on behalf of Daryl Lynn. So that is an example of where you need to carefully consider who you want to designate as your advanced care, as your representative. Oops, did I? Oh, yeah, here we go. Sorry about that. My fault. So advanced care planning is another service that Orderly Affairs provides. I've again divided this subject matter into manageable chunks, making the work easier to understand, easier to complete. I did training when I was working, a lot of training, so I think I have a pretty good methodology. These items are part of an advanced care planning package that will address your medical health care decision making when and if, again, you can't make these decisions yourself. When individuals talk to their physicians or family about their preferences for future healthcare planning, they typically have less fear and anxiety and feel they have more ability to influence and direct their medical care. And they now know their physicians have a better understanding of their wishes and have comfort knowing their advanced care planning decisions are in place. These are all very good reasons to consider getting your advanced care planning in order. So I want to ask about a green envelope. Is anyone familiar with the purpose of a green envelope on your refrigerator? Any hands? I see 3 or 4, 5, 6. Okay. So let's become more familiar with what the purpose of a green envelope on your fridge does. When visiting a home on an emergency call, paramedics in BC will look for a copy of your advanced care planning documents, which they expect to find in a magnetized green envelope on your fridge. This location actually is universally understood as the place to find such documents. So it's not just BC that this is a practice, it's actually a practice internationally. If you cannot or do not want to put your green envelope on the fridge, I don't, provide a clear note on the fridge where it can be easily found, such as under a sink, or what I do is I have a little green piece of paper on the top right-hand corner of my fridge that says green envelope in cupboard to the immediate right of the fridge. Some people take their green envelope when they travel so that medical staff at that location will have information on their medical health care history should they become hospitalized while away from home. So all of us are familiar and accept that when we travel out of country, we should have healthcare insurance. But if we are hospitalized out of country, what information do those healthcare staff have on our medical history? Who's our emergency contact, the representative? Any other kind of documents that I'm going to talk a little bit more about, but what you would typically know as the no CPR form or advanced directives or anything to that effect. My husband and I both have our own green envelopes. We have our medical history in there. Any list of medications should be included in that. Of course, our respective representation agreements. My husband will take that with him when he goes fishing to Kamloops, for example. So all his buddies know that, oh yeah, Mike's prepared to go to the hospital. He's got his green envelope with him. But even within BC, because we are in 5 different health authorities, if he was to be hospitalized, they have no information on his healthcare history. And in order to access that information, I'm sure they could get to it eventually, but there it is documented in that green envelope. So as a first gap measure, him or one of his buddies can present that information, and now they have that. And I do understand that they are trying to connect all of the data sources that contain our health resources in the province, but I'm sure that's going to take a while. So the Frail Elder Index, something else I'd like to talk about during this presentation. Is anyone familiar with the Frail Elder Index? Oh, you're wonderful. Doug is great. Are you a doctor?
I'm in the health profession.
Oh, there you go. Wonderful. So the Frail Elder Index is a set of aging standards developed by the National Institute of Aging in Canada and is actually used in many countries worldwide. In BC, this Frail Elder Index is a questionnaire used by doctors in BC to gauge our state of health. BC healthcare system has determined that you are first considered potentially a frail elder at age 65, and that additional medical services may be necessary. Most of us also think that we are healthier than we are because change often comes slowly and we adapt. And I can relate to this. In the fall, I took a friend of mine to IKEA on the mainland just for a day trip. But when we were planning our trip, we were both like, okay, we have to plan it in such a way that we're not driving at night because we don't like driving anymore. And I just turned 60. And without realizing it, I was adapting to my own changing health situations. So we do this without even thinking, but we are aging, whether we like it or not. We talk about the Frail Elder Index as part of our advanced care planning service, as we recognize that an honest understanding of our state of health also prepares us to have much better discussions with our doctors and healthcare teams. So when you go to visit your doctor, time is precious. You don't want to be spending your time arguing with the fact that, you are getting older. There are things happening here. Let's just accept that and use our time constructively when we visit our doctor. So now we will talk about quantity versus quality of life. This is another very important concept that comes up with advanced care planning. Quality of life typically refers to enjoying a good life. Quantity of life typically refers to prolonged life, regardless of our capacity to enjoy that life. At the end of life, elderly adults often say they want quality of life over quantity. However, when left to a family member to decide, they will often choose quantity over quality of life. And I'm sure you all have stories or you've heard of stories of this scenario. The orange zone in this slide represents the time in life we typically need help from our family and friends with healthcare decision making. Ideally, we want to consider advanced care planning well before we get into the orange zone, yet this is when it typically happens, if it happens at all. Far too many older, frail adults spend their last days in critical care units on ventilators and complete life support because they have not discussed their wishes with doctors or their loved ones and loved ones do not know what to do. Knowing your values and beliefs will help shape your preferences for care at end of life. The more you share and have these conversations with your loved ones, the easier it will be for them to accept and respect your wishes, whatever those may be. When the people you trust know what future healthcare treatments you would choose if given the option, it is easier for them to make decisions and talk to medical professionals on your behalf should they need to do so. And from many people I've spoken with, they are, when that happens, they are so grateful that those conversations have taken place because now there's a comfort in making the decisions they have to. Typically, it is to let someone die. And that is a very difficult decision to make when it's your decision. So as of May 2017, all provincial health authorities have implemented what is known as the MOST form, which stands for Medical Orders for Scope of Treatment, for all adult patients admitted to hospital or residential and community care facilities. VHA family doctors are also actively discussing this document with their patients. It is also being considered as a no CPR form. The MOST form is a doctor's order, therefore it must be signed by a doctor and by a capable patient or their legal representative. And so I should have prefaced my comment about the VHA family doctors. I actually partner with a woman from the Lower Mainland. Her name is Connie Jorsvik. She is the guru for advanced care planning in BC, if not the country. And she's very familiar with what the different health authorities offer. She, of course, works with the 3 health authorities in the Lower Mainland, but she knows this about VHA, that doctors are actively letting their patients know about this most form, which I'm going to talk to a little bit more. Oh, and I've got Vanna, aka Mike, who's going to show you a book that Connie has recently published called Navigating the BC Healthcare System. Connie and I were delivering advanced care planning in the fall. So if you're interested in that resource, we're selling them for $30 for Connie. So the MOST form identifies one of 6 designations for the scope of treatment. It is typically thought of as the treatment you desire most in the situation you find yourself in when hospitalized. Therefore, a new MOST form should be completed every time you enter the hospital because your wishes may change from one visit to the next. Most designations are used to quickly inform other health practitioners of your wishes around the scope of treatment in the event of that medical emergency, such as cardiac arrest, critical care, medical interventions, and again, when you are incapable of making or refusing, giving or refusing consent for treatment. When left to the moment of a medical health emergency, this can be a very stressful and challenging situation. And through Connie, of course, I've heard of numerous examples where this MOST form is given to the patient and or their family in that medical emergency. I mean, of course, it's written in its own medical language. It's very overwhelming. This is really about just preparing ourselves for the purpose of that form, what it says, and what our choices would be in the event that we would need to complete that. And for that reason, it's an excellent idea to familiarize yourself and your representative with this form and what options you would choose under what circumstances before any such event, if it was to happen. And you don't have to wait for your doctor, your family physician practitioner, nurse practitioner to talk about this document. You can actually raise it with them. I have copies of the MOST form for VIHA available here. They're slightly different in each health authority, I understand, but this is the one that VIHA is using. And you can take that away today and review that and make an appointment to chat with your doctor about it. If you Google VIHA MOST, it will pop up as well. So conversations about getting our affairs in order can be complicated, and our culture understands that when we use this term, getting your affairs in order, we are typically referring to the end of life and death. But getting our affairs in order, as the tagline in this slide suggests, is really about making it known how we want to live. Again, having these critical conversations about our affairs well before dying is really about how we want to live more fully here and now. It always seems too early to have these conversations until it's too late. So we're coming to the end, a little bit about my guide. You can purchase it from the website, of course, but I would encourage you to contact me personally if you're not purchasing it today to save the $20 mailing charge. I just put one in the mail this morning. It was $22 to Gabriel Islet. So not cheap to mail, and you're going to be paying $20 to do that. Just contact me. I'm running around the city all the time, and I'm happy to arrange delivery. Yes. And a little bit about my Orderly Affairs advanced care planning session. So this typically includes a 90-minute presentation. There is a digital workbook that complements that presentation. That's where you have different tasks to complete, links to forms that you might be interested in. And that service includes a private 50-minute consultation. Connie and I are planning to do a public advanced care planning session in Victoria. We did our first one last October. We've got another one scheduled for the end of October this year. And that one is without the 50-minute consultation afterwards. And it will be like $25, $30. So a good place to start. And we typically do advanced care planning for groups. So organized groups like CARP, like if you wanted to organize an advanced care planning session, you would contract us and we would come and deliver it specifically for your membership in whatever format you want. That's how we typically offer this service. And aging navigation, if you need a little help with personal planning related to getting your affairs in order, I would love to help you coach through these matters. I also have a handout available for you to take away today and review on aging navigation. I've developed this service because I've been learning that sometimes what prevents us from getting our affairs in order is just learning what is keeping us away from that. What is the fear that is preventing us to get that going? And so sometimes a simple coaching session is all you need to get over that bump. And so with that service, I provide a free 30-minute consultation, and you can book that on my website as well. Or you can call me, that's fine too. I have business cards with my phone number. And I also have other services on my website, a lot of fun things like dinner with Daryl Lynn. You can invite me to your home. I'll talk to a group of your friends over dinner about end of life matters. I have all kinds of different ways we do that. I also started up recently. I'm really looking forward to this. This Ain't Your Mother's Tupperware Party. So it's organized like a Tupperware party for those who are familiar with Tupperware parties in the room. But instead of plastic kitchen containers, we're talking about end of life in a fun way. And I'm part of a community here in Victoria that our passion is trying to normalize end-of-life conversations. And so we do all kinds of different things to encourage that, to support that. I'm going to be talking about my newsletter right away, but if you're interested, the first Wednesday of every month, I co-facilitate a CARP discussion series on end-of-life matters. You can take a photo of this if you're interested at Cafe Fantastico. You can come down and have a light dinner, coffee. You can have beer or wine they sell there. And at 6:30, we have a conversation about end of life. And I'm actually, this term, I'm bringing in different guest speakers to talk about some different things. And finally, I have a bi-monthly newsletter. I get lots of positive feedback on this newsletter. It's no more than a page long. It gives you some bit of information on getting our affairs in order and any kind of events that are coming up typically within Victoria, but sometimes I talk about provincial commemorations or what have you, like Make a Will Month in October. And Mike is circulating a sign-up sheet for that newsletter if you might be interested in receiving that. And I also have a tab on my website called Free Stuff. And you can take a look there and see what other ways I might be involved in helping people have those conversations. And there was something else that just crossed my mind. Gosh, I've forgotten now. It'll come to me, I'm sure.
Another seniors moment.
And yes. Well, you know what my husband and I call it? NCD, normal cognitive decline. So that was an NCD moment. And so that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope that this has been enlightening. It's been engaging. I'm really looking forward to having some discussion with you now. And I hope you'll pick up some of the handouts on the table here. I also have BC Seniors Guide if anyone is interested. If you don't have one already, you're welcome to pick those up as well. So that's it.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Darylyn. Obviously, I'll pull it over some questions. I just had a look at the chat to make sure there wasn't something there. The only question I had is it possible to get a copy of Darylyn's slides? I'll leave that up to you to answer, but there will be an article in the newsletter that talks about this, and it will be on, as I said, on YouTube to see it again.
Right.
And we have a question here.
Does the most form in some ways take the place of the representation group? I understand that it's temporary, it's changed every time you go in, but does it come function the same?
No, it does not. No. So the most form is divided into these 6 categories, which in my service, we go into depth explaining those 6 categories. Don't be scared off by the most form when you read it, because it is a lot of medical jargon. You just need to get someone to help you go through that. And that is what the purpose of the most form, to be, selecting the type of care you would want in that particular situation at that time of hospitalization. So whereas the rest of the representation agreement is a legislated document that will designate someone to make your healthcare decisions, not on your behalf, or sorry, not for you, but on your behalf, meaning the decision you would make. So really important distinction. But your doctor would be able to, if you had questions on the most form, they could help you with that.
See a question here.
Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Do you have a category or a tab for the directive for me, like to do a preliminary directive? I know that we're not at that stage with me yet,
Right.
but have something that is in preparation for that?
No, I don't. So MAID is not part of advanced care planning. And there is a very specific set of criteria and circumstances to qualify for MAID, so to speak. If you Google MAID and VHA, your health authority, you will get that information. I understand they provide very good service in terms of answering questions. But in terms of predetermining MAID, no, I don't think you can jump that. I don't know if that would be the case.
Well, Dying with Dignity is a group that's lobbying the government.
Yes, that's true.
And they are trying to get a directive that you can have in place.
Right.
So I just wondered if you had any of that.
No, but what we do talk about at length in my advanced care planning service is about medical interventions. So different ways that we are currently prolonging life in a hospital environment, typically, because we have the choice to do that, but we also have the choice to not accept those treatments. And we don't talk a lot about that, but in my service, we do talk about that because those are options as well. And I don't have a healthcare background, so I let Connie do a lot of that explaining. But one example, which is easy for me to understand, is artificial nutrition. That is not something we have to accept. We have a choice. And because, our healthcare system, our tradition of medicine has been do no harm, prolong life as much as possible, then all the measures are put in life to prolong your life. But the question is that a quality of life that I would want for myself? And what are my options here? So we try to provide some education on that piece of end of life.
There's another, you can move over here a little
sorry.
further. Another question that came up, which asked if the items mentioned would be available to those who are online. And as I asked Darylyn previously, if she provides me with PDF files of those, I will put those on our Google Drive, and they will be, the URL for that will be in our newsletter that reports on this meeting. So it will be available to anyone here as well as anyone online. Those who are here, of course, can pick up some of the documentation at the front or at the back. But for those online, I'll try to get that information out to you as well. Any other questions?
Yes.
In the context of a representative agreement, if you have 2 children, both of which you are very close to, could you tell the possible alliances of a joint representing?
It's not a bad idea at all, actually, providing that both representatives fully understand what your wishes are and will make decisions accordingly. So, if you have one child, for example, who doesn't agree with the direction you want to go, that might not be a great idea. So it really depends on each circumstance. Yeah.
We're going to make a comment about that because I have sort of 2 diametrically opposed examples. In one case, I have 3 children. And I have had this discussion with them, and it's written in a documentation that is joint for all of them because they get along very well. On the other hand, I have a close friend and colleague of mine for 30 years who died, had no will, no documentation, 3 children, and they barely talk to each other.
Oh,
So there it would have been really helpful to have a designated person or an order of who to contact in which order. So there's a couple of different examples for you. We had a question in the front next.
Where get these green envelopes?
Oh, I forgot to mention that. When they are looking for a green envelope, they're looking for any kind of green envelope, okay? I do sell them for convenience. I've got 2 different styles. They're $8 each. One has a zipper top, and the other one is like a folder, expandable folder. And there's a couple of magnets in there. You want to magnetize that envelope, you can do that. So
For a stainless steel fridge?
no, but yeah,
Okay, thank you.
little green note on the top of your fridge.
Sticker. Post-it notes will help.
Yeah.
I thought there was another question in the back here somewhere. Take the hand down. Yes, go ahead.
Not so much a question, but my husband and I went in and had our representative agreements done a couple of years ago. And we have 2 sons. So what I did for myself is my husband is my primary representative, but in case he starts to waffle about what he wants to do for me,
Yes.
I have both of our sons' names, and they know very, very well what I do and don't want. And I actually gave the lawyer an example, and it was documented on my representative agreement, that if I was to suffer a brain injury that was significant enough, be it car crash, stroke, whatever, that if I cannot feed myself, toilet myself, and dress myself, do not plug me into anything. You'll be allowed to put a catheter in and nothing more.
Yes. Thank you for raising that, because, the representation agreement, there is some room there to document specific things. But number one, the most important thing to do, which you mentioned, is to have these conversations, get people on the same page. And then number 2, to complement the representation agreement, write it down, write it in detail, write your wishes. I mean, it can turn into a beautiful letter, actually. And people will waffle, your family members will waffle. But when they have that kind of communication documented in their hand, it makes it easier.
The reason why when they have them in their hands, the reason why they won't waffle is because then they're not making the decision. They're only following your direction.
That's right, of course.
So they're related to that bird.
That's right. But there's that tendency, so it just reinforces your decision making. Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's one of the other key elements of having it documented, is that it's a gift to them to not have to worry about making those decisions. You have already made them for yourself.
That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that.
Any other questions? Yes, yeah.
There's a booklet here that we gave Shoal, and it's called My Voice.
Yes.
And in that they have the representation agreement. that you
Template,
can
yep.
Yourself. Don't have to have it notarized, you just have to get 2 witnesses.
That's correct.
And on that agreement, it states have in your representative
Representation agreement.
in the designated person,
Mhm.
they want you to choose one with then an alternate. But it states that you need to have a certain person as your person. And then if you want somebody else, in my case, I have 2 daughters.
Mhm.
One lives nearby and one doesn't.
Yeah.
So the one that doesn't then is the alternate.
Yes.
I didn't see that it would make them both on that, but maybe.
Well, that's your alternate.
Yes.
That's the alternate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that,
Yeah.
the alternate only works when the first one is not willing or able.
That's right.
So-
And a really good idea
That's
to have
One
them.
option, you can talk to your lawyer, because you can have a joint where you can either have one because they're close by and have to do something quickly, or it can be a combination thereof. That is legal in BC.
Okay, but doesn't state that in the.
Okay.
That.
Yeah, so My Voice is, this woman was talking about a provincial resource called My Voice. So this is something that's accessible to everyone. If you Google province of BC, My Voice, this will come up. It is a great tool for accessing this information, these documents. There are templates for the representation agreement, for advanced directives. I'm not sure if there's a third thing, but anyway, in there. And the idea is that it's accessible to everyone for free. And a representation agreement, I just want to repeat this because it's an important point, is a legal document, but it does not need to be notarized as long as you have two witnesses there. And of course, there's qualifications for the witnesses, yada, yada, yada. It's all explained in that booklet. Orderly Affairs, our advanced care planning service, we do refer to that document. We use some pieces of it, but we go into a much more extensive understanding of advanced care planning right from the beginning, like capable mind. Well, what does that mean, right? So we talk about that. And even though vigil planning is not really part of advanced care planning, we do talk about vigil planning and what is involved in that, because there are some forms in BC that relate to vigil planning, like the EDIT form, which is allows you to die at home. And we like to let people know that that's actually an option, because 70% of people would prefer to die at home, but 69% of us actually die in the hospital. So there's a disconnect there. It's not always the right circumstance, to be at home, but when it is, and it can be accommodated, it's a good option that we're just not aware of. So we're trying to bring awareness to that. And one other thing I want to mention before I forget, have another NCD moment, is on my website, I have a tab called videos, and there are 12 different videos there related to advanced care planning, that if this is something new to you and you want to get more familiar with it, these are some great resources to look at. I think you can watch all of them within 60 minutes. There's a lot of information on the internet on advanced care planning. If you Google advanced care planning, you're going to get over 60 million hits. What you need is what is relevant and important to you here in British Columbia. And so in my research and in my ongoing work in this field, I provide videos that I think are really, really helpful and relevant to people in BC.
Okay, so in closing the chapter meeting, I want to thank you, Darlene, for all that useful information and more that's going to be available. And to Jennifer Van Ness, the director of the Shoal Center here, Senior Services, and their staff for being set up this great space we've been using. And of course, to the board chapter who have been assisting today. This session, as I mentioned, has been recorded, will be available on YouTube about a week from now. Our next chapter meeting will be here. It'll again be a hybrid on March the 12th. Guest speaker is going to be Dale Eggersman of Beacon Law. Well known in this community, certainly engaged with many of the things going on in the Sydney area, talking about the advantages of a lawyer for estate planning, tips and tricks and trips. So hopefully we'll see you all at that meeting, and information about that and other meetings coming up will be available through our newsletter on our Facebook page. We also would like to hear from you. Just email us at vancouverisland@carp.ca. And for those of you who came today and are online, thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And thank you.